Last night's Jimmy Kimmel Live erupted into chaos as Elon Musk clashed with host Jimmy Kimmel in a jaw-dropping on-air meltdown. Kimmel's jabs hit a nerve, Tesla stocks tumbled, and Musk stormed off the set in a blaze of fury. Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button for more jaw-dropping stories like this. The studio lights dimmed as the Jimmy Kimmel Live logo flashed across screens nationwide. The audience erupted in applause as Jimmy Kimmel bounded onto the stage, his signature grin plastered across his face. Tonight was special. Tech billionaire Elon Musk was his guest, and viewers could feel the excitement buzzing through their screens. "We've got an incredible show tonight," Jimmy announced, adjusting his tie. "Our guest is a man who wants to put people on Mars, make cars drive themselves, and implant chips in our brains. Please welcome the man who never sleeps, Elon Musk." The audience clapped wildly as Elon walked onto the stage, waving awkwardly. He wore his usual black t-shirt and seemed relaxed as he shook Jimmy's hand before settling into the guest chair. "Thanks for having me, Jimmy," Elon said with a small smile. "It's great to be here." Jimmy nodded, shuffling the cards on his desk. "Great to have you, Elon. So many things to talk about. Rockets, electric cars, tunnels, brain chips, Twitter. You're like a walking sci-fi movie." Elon chuckled. "I just like solving problems." The first few minutes went smoothly. They talked about SpaceX's latest rocket launch and the new Tesla models hitting the market. The audience laughed at Elon's dry jokes and seemed impressed by his vision for the future. But then, something in Jimmy's demeanor shifted. "So, Elon," Jimmy said, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before, "you're trying to colonize Mars while Earth is dealing with climate change. Isn't that like abandoning a sinking ship instead of helping bail water?" Elon's smile faltered. "Actually, we can do both. Tesla is fighting climate change by—" "Right. Tesla," Jimmy interrupted, his eyes gleaming. "The car company that keeps promising self-driving vehicles that still crash into emergency vehicles. How's that going?" A tense murmur rippled through the audience. This wasn't the usual playful banter. Jimmy was going for the jugular. Elon shifted in his seat. "Our safety record is actually excellent compared to—" "And what about those brain chips?" Jimmy pressed on. "You want to put computers in people's heads when your cars can't even avoid fire trucks? Maybe fix the cars before you start drilling into skulls?" The audience gasped. Some laughed nervously, unsure if this was a planned bit or a genuine attack. Elon's face hardened as he gripped the armrests of his chair. "Our Neuralink technology is being developed with rigorous testing and—" "Testing, right?" Jimmy scoffed. "Like you tested those Cybertrucks before showing windows that break during your own demonstration? That was comedy gold, by the way." "Thanks for that." Elon's jaw clenched. The cameras caught the flash of anger in his eyes as he took a deep breath. "Look, Jimmy, innovation involves taking risks and—" "Speaking of risks," Jimmy said, turning to face the audience with an exaggerated wink, "have you folks seen Tesla stock lately? It's like a roller coaster designed by someone who's never heard of safety harnesses." The audience's reaction was mixed. Some laughed, others sat in uncomfortable silence. The camera panned to Elon, whose face had turned a deep shade of red. "That's not funny," Elon said quietly. "Thousands of people work at Tesla, and they're doing important work." Jimmy leaned forward. "I'm just saying, for a genius, you sure have a lot of projects that don't quite work as advertised. Remember when you said Twitter would be better after you bought it? How's that free speech experiment going?" Something snapped in Elon's expression. The playful billionaire persona vanished, replaced by raw frustration. "You invited me here to mock my companies?" Elon asked, his voice dangerously low. "The companies that are advancing space exploration, sustainable energy, and neural technology? I invited you here because people love a good train wreck," Jimmy fired back. "And let's be honest, Some of your ideas are exactly that. The audience fell silent. The cameraman zoomed in on Elon's face, capturing the moment his professional composure began to crack. You think it's easy to build the future? Elon challenged, leaning forward. I'd like to see you try to land rockets or mass-produce electric vehicles while keyboard warriors and late-night hosts take cheap shots. Jimmy raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. Wow, somebody's sensitive tonight. Did the latest Twitter algorithm not boost your memes enough? This is ridiculous, Elon muttered, glancing off camera as if looking for a producer to intervene. You know what's ridiculous? Jimmy continued, warming to his theme. Building underground tunnels for cars when we need better public transport. It's like trying to solve traffic by digging a very expensive hole. The tension in the studio was palpable. The audience watched in stunned silence as the interview spiraled further out of control. Behind the scenes, producers frantically debated whether to cut to commercial. My tunnels are designed to revolutionize urban transport, Elon defended, his voice rising. The Boring Company should be called the Boring Interview Company, Jimmy cut in. Because that's what happens when someone keeps talking about tunnels. Elon's nostrils flared. The veins in his neck became visible as he struggled to maintain his composure. The camera caught every detail of his growing rage. You know what, Jimmy? Elon said, his voice trembling slightly. I came here to have a conversation, not to be your punching bag. Jimmy smirked. Come on, Elon. For a guy who posts memes all day, you can't take a few jokes? What happened to that free speech? Absolutism? There's a difference between free speech and whatever this is, Elon shot back, gesturing between them. This is called comedy, Jimmy replied. Something your robot tweets haven't quite mastered yet. The studio audience watched in shock as Elon abruptly stood up, towering over Jimmy. The talk show host's smile faltered for just a moment before he doubled down. Leaving so soon? We haven't even talked about your flamethrowers or those solar roofs that almost nobody has, Jimmy called out. Elon reached for his microphone with shaking hands. The sound technician scrambled as he roughly unpinned it from his shirt. You want to talk about failures? Elon said, his voice rising to a dangerous level. How about we discuss your failing ratings? Or is that too personal? The audience gasped as Jimmy's face darkened. No one had ever dared to hit back at the host on his own show like this before. At least my job doesn't involve overpromising and underdelivering, Jimmy retorted. The difference is, people know what they're getting with my show. Elon dropped the microphone onto his chair with a loud thud that echoed through the studio speakers. I'm done here. I can't take this anymore. As Elon turned to walk off stage, Jimmy called after him. Ladies and gentlemen, there goes the man. Who wants to upload our brains to the cloud when he can't even handle a little late-night banter? The studio erupted into chaos as Elon paused at the edge of the stage, his back to the cameras. What would he do next? The tension was unbearable as viewers across America leaned closer to their screens. Elon slowly turned around, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. The studio lights caught the fire in his eyes as he marched back toward Jimmy's desk. The audience fell silent, phones raised to capture whatever was about to happen. You think this is funny? Elon demanded, his voice echoing through the suddenly quiet studio. You invite guests on your show to ambush them? Is that how you get your laughs now? Jimmy leaned back in his chair, trying to maintain his cool demeanor, but a flicker of surprise crossed his face. Guests rarely fought back this way. Come on, Elon, Jimmy said with a nervous chuckle. It's just a few jokes. Lighten up. Your rocket launches aren't the only things that can be explosive, right, folks? He turned to the audience, searching for support. But the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some laughed awkwardly, while others sat in stunned silence, witnessing the unscripted drama unfold before them. Jokes are supposed to be funny, Elon fired back. Not cheap shots from someone who's never built anything in his life. You sit here in your cushy chair making fun of people who are trying to solve real problems. A producer stepped halfway onto the stage, clearly unsure whether to intervene. The camera caught her anxious expression before quickly cutting back. To the confrontation. Real problems? Jimmy scoffed, finding his footing again. Like making flamethrowers for fun? Or spending billions on Twitter while your car company loses value faster than a smartphone from 2010? Elon's hands curled into fists at his sides. Tesla stock fluctuates because we're doing something difficult. We're changing entire industries, while you're telling knock-knock jokes. The audience gasped as Jimmy stood up, bringing himself eye to eye with the tech billionaire. The two men stared each other down across the desk as camera operators scrambled to capture every angle of the unprecedented showdown. At least my knock-knock jokes work as advertised, Jimmy retorted. They don't crash into fire trucks or explode. On launch pads. That's how innovation works, Elon shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. You try, you fail, you learn, you improve. What exactly have you innovated lately, Jimmy? Besides new ways to suck up to movie stars selling their latest superhero film, the audience responded with a collective, "Ooh," as Jimmy's face reddened. This wasn't the easy, scripted interview they were used to seeing. At least I deliver what I promise, Jimmy said through gritted teeth. I don't tell people they can live on Mars by 2024 and then quietly push it back a decade when nobody's looking. Elon slammed his hand on Jimmy's desk, causing pens and note cards to jump. You have no idea what it takes to advance humanity. While you're making jokes, my teams are working around the clock to build a better future. The commercial brake light began flashing frantically, but neither man seemed to notice. The director's voice could be faintly heard calling for a cut to ads, but the cameras kept rolling, capturing television gold. A better future? Jimmy laughed harshly. Your idea of a better future is rich people escaping to Mars while the rest of us deal with climate change down here. How's that solar roof business doing, by the way? The one that was going to revolutionize energy? Another broken promise? Something dangerous flashed in Elon's eyes. The audience fell completely silent, sensing they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed millions of times online by morning. You want to talk about broken promises? Elon's voice had dropped to an icy calm. How about promising viewers intelligent conversation instead of cheap gotcha moments? How about respecting the people who agree to come on your show? Jimmy's producer was now fully on stage, desperately signaling for a commercial break, but the host waved her off, unwilling to back down. Respect is earned, Elon, Jimmy said, crossing his arms. Just like reliability. Maybe if you're self-driving, cars stopped hitting emergency vehicles, people would trust your brain chips. Tesla's autopilot safety record is exceptional compared to human drivers, Elon countered, his voice rising again. But you don't care about facts, do you? Just whatever gets you viral clips for your failing show. Jimmy leaned forward, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his desk. Failing? My show is doing just fine. Unlike Tesla stock, which drops every time you post another bizarre tweet, the camera caught Elon's jaw clenching as he struggled to maintain control. A vein pulsed visibly on his forehead as he took a step closer to Jimmy's desk. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? Elon said, his voice dangerously quiet. You're so busy tearing down people who are actually trying to make a difference that you've forgotten how to do anything meaningful yourself. The studio was so quiet. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Even the camera operators seemed frozen in place, transfixed by the unfolding drama. And you know what your problem is? Jimmy shot back. You think throwing money at problems makes you some kind of superhero. Newsflash. Most of your big ideas are just expensive toys for rich people. Something final and decisive shifted in Elon's expression. The audience watched as he took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and looked directly into the nearest camera. America, this is what passes for discourse now, he said calmly. Mock the people trying to advance clean energy, space exploration, and brain-computer interfaces. Laugh at failure instead of learning from it. Celebrate cynicism instead of hope. Jimmy opened his mouth to interrupt, but Elon raised his voice, speaking over him. I came here tonight to talk about projects that thousands of brilliant engineers are working on. Projects that could help humanity become a multi-planetary species and address climate change. Instead, I got cheap shots about stock prices from a comedian who's never built anything more complicated than a joke. The audience was riveted. Some began to applaud, others remained silent, unsure whose side they were on in this unprecedented late-night battle. Social media was already exploding with clips and comments as viewers shared the unfolding drama in real time. Jimmy, sensing he might be losing the audience, tried a different approach. Look, Elon, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. We didn't get off on any foot, Elon cut him off sharply. You planned this ambush from the start. Well, congratulations. You'll get your viral moment. I hope the clicks are worth your integrity. With that, Elon turned again to leave. The studio was in complete disarray now, with producers frantically signaling and audience members murmuring amongst themselves. Some had stood up, cameras rolling on their phones to capture whatever happened next. Jimmy, unwilling to let Elon have the last word, called after him. Hey, maybe use some of those Mars rocket boosters to help your sense of humor get off the ground. Elon stopped dead in his tracks. The entire studio held its breath as he slowly turned around one final time. What would the unpredictable billionaire do next? His face was eerily calm as he walked back toward Jimmy's desk with deliberate steps. The audience fell completely silent, phones still recording, not wanting to miss a single moment of this historic television meltdown. You know what, Jimmy? Elon said, his voice unnervingly controlled. I came here tonight expecting an actual conversation. That was clearly a mistake. Jimmy's smile faltered slightly, but he pressed on. Come on, it's just comedy. Don't all your Twitter followers love your memes and jokes? Suddenly you can't take what you dish out? Elon's eyes narrowed. There's a difference between jokes and whatever this hatchet job was supposed to be. You didn't invite me here to talk. You invited me here to be your punching bag. It's called an interview, Jimmy retorted, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. The audience could sense the shift in power. The host was losing control of his own show. No, Elon said firmly. An interview involves questions and answers. What you did was string together a series of attacks poorly disguised as jokes. And not even good ones. The camera caught Jimmy's knuckles whitening as he gripped his desk. His producer was frantically making cutting motions from the sidelines, but it was too late to stop what was happening. Look who's suddenly a comedy expert, Jimmy said with a forced laugh. Maybe stick to rockets that occasionally explode? Something shifted in Elon's demeanor. Instead of getting angrier, a strange calm seemed to settle over him. He actually smiled, which somehow made the moment even more tense. You know what's really funny, Jimmy? Elon said, pulling a chair from the side of the stage and sitting down uninvited. The move was so unexpected that no one tried to stop him. What's funny is that you think tearing people down makes you clever. The audience was completely captivated now. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't how these shows were supposed to go. I didn't come to your show to be insulted, Elon continued, leaning forward in his chair. But since I'm here, let's have a real conversation. Not for you, but for everyone watching. Jimmy blinked, visibly thrown off balance by this sudden change in approach. Sure, what do you want to talk about? How sensitive billionaires are to jokes. Let's talk about why mockery is easier than creation, Elon replied calmly. Let's talk about why it's simpler to laugh at people trying to solve hard problems than to solve those problems yourself. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. Even Jimmy seemed momentarily at a loss for words. My companies aren't perfect, Elon continued, his voice steady. SpaceX rockets have exploded. Tesla has missed deadlines. Neuralink faces enormous challenges. The Boring Company might seem strange to many people. But here's what you're missing. Trying and sometimes failing is how progress happens. Some audience members began to nod. Others were still recording, knowing this would be all over the internet within minutes. "You think failure is something to mock," Elon said, looking directly at Jimmy. "I think failure is a necessary step toward success. And that's the difference between us." Jimmy shifted uncomfortably in his chair. This wasn't how his ambush was supposed to go. "Look, Elon, we're just having some fun here." "No, you were having fun at my expense," Elon interrupted. "At the expense of thousands of engineers and scientists working day and night to build a better future. That's not comedy. That's just being mean while hiding behind a punchline." The audience began to murmur. Some were even applauding. The balance of the room was shifting noticeably. Jimmy's face flushed red. "Don't lecture me about comedy, Musk. I've been doing this for decades. You sell cars and dig holes." "And you read jokes written by other people," Elon fired back. "Is that why you're so threatened by someone who actually creates things? Because deep down, you know you're just a middleman for other people's talent," the audience gasped. Jimmy's face went from red to white in an instant. That blow had clearly landed. "You don't know the first thing about what I do," Jimmy said, his voice shaking slightly. "And you don't know the first thing about electric vehicles, space exploration, or neural interfaces," Elon replied evenly. "Yet that didn't stop you from mocking them." For the first time that evening, Jimmy looked genuinely uncomfortable. The cameras caught his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. Elon stood up, but this time, there was no anger in his movements. "I'm going to leave now, Jimmy. Not because I'm offended or can't take a joke, but because this conversation isn't productive for anyone. Your viewers deserve better. So do my teams who work tirelessly on these projects." He turned to face the audience directly. "For those interested in the actual work we're doing, not the punchlines, I invite you to learn about it yourselves. Form your own opinions based on facts, not late-night comedy bits." The audience burst into applause. Not the polite kind that talk shows usually get, but genuine enthusiastic clapping. Some people even stood up. Jimmy sat at his desk, clearly stunned by how quickly he'd lost the room. As Elon began walking toward the exit again, Jimmy made one desperate attempt to regain control. "That's right, folks," he called out with forced cheerfulness. "When the jokes hit too close to home, just lecture everyone about innovation and storm off stage." But his words fell flat. The audience was still applauding Elon, who didn't even bother to turn around this time. He simply raised a hand in farewell as he disappeared backstage. The show's director, sensing disaster, finally managed to cut to commercial. But it was too late. Clips were already spreading across social media like wildfire. Kimmel's Elon and Elon walks out were trending within minutes. In the chaotic moments after the commercial break began, Jimmy sat shell-shocked at his desk. His producer rushed over, whispering frantically in his ear. The audience continued buzzing with excitement, many still filming despite the recording light being off. When the show returned from commercial, Jimmy was noticeably subdued. "Well, that was something," he said with a weak laugh. "We'll be right back with our musical guest after this." Meanwhile, backstage, Elon was already on his phone, scrolling through the explosion of notifications. A production assistant nervously approached him. "Mr. Musk, do you need anything? A car is waiting to take you." "I'm fine," Elon replied, surprisingly calm. "Actually, I haven't felt this good in weeks." By morning, the Confrontation had been viewed tens of millions of times across every platform. News channels played the clips on repeat, with commentators fiercely debating who had come out on top. Twitter, now just called X, was completely dominated by the showdown. Jimmy's team released a carefully worded statement about comedy sometimes crossing lines and respecting differences of opinion. Elon simply posted a meme of a microphone dropping with a rocket booster attached. Tesla stock, contrary to what might have been expected, actually rose the next day. Analysts suggested that Elon's composed final stand had impressed investors. More than Jimmy's jokes had worried them. A week later, Jimmy opened his show with something unprecedented: an apology. "I want to address what happened last week with Elon Musk," he said to the camera, looking uncharacteristically serious. "Comedy is a powerful tool, but it shouldn't be a weapon. I crossed a line, and for that, I apologize." The next day, Elon responded with a tweet: "Apology accepted. Innovation is messy. Comedy is hard. Let's all do better." And just like that, what had begun as an ambush interview turned into something unexpected. A moment that forced everyone, from late-night hosts to tech billionaires to everyday viewers, to think about the line between critique and cruelty, between jokes and jabs. The clip would go down in talk show history, not just as an epic confrontation, but as a rare moment of unscripted truth in a carefully crafted entertainment landscape. For once, the cameras had captured something real: the messy, uncomfortable collision of comedy and consequence, of mockery and the human beings behind the headlines. In Hollywood conference rooms and Silicon Valley offices alike, people watched and re-watched the showdown, each seeing something different. Was it a cautionary tale about preparation? A lesson in grace under pressure? A warning about pushing jokes too far? Perhaps it was all of these things. But one thing was certain: neither. Man would forget the night when jokes turned serious, and a talk show turned into an unexpected battleground of ideas.